everybody. This is Orange, or Robert, however you want to talk about it. Today we're going to make bread. I've been talking about doing this for a long time. And as usual, I'm winging it. But I do have recipes that I'm going to use. There are several I pulled off the internet. One's for a pumpernickel. It's not a true pumpernickel. It's a faux pumpernickel, but it's not bad. Next is a whole wheat pizza crust, which I've made several times and is delicious. I've got a recipe for classic 100% whole wheat bread from King Arthur Flour. And if we have time and the energy, I may actually make chocolate sauce. The other thing I'm going to make, I may not make one of the other breads, but one of the things I'm definitely going to make, here's a book that I recommend highly, and I know it's backwards. It's called Baking Artisan Bread by, oops, here we go. The author's name is Mark Friend. Recommend the book highly. I'm going to have to figure out a way to reverse the video on this. But in the meantime, this book from Mr. Friend is all about making doughs or making breads with natural starters. It says right here in the title, you can't read it because it's backwards, natural starters, which means I made my own starter. And that's what this is. This started as a straight sourdough starter, and I transitioned it to a rye starter by first going to making several sourdough whole wheat loaves and then going to rye because I wanted to make pumpernickel, and because that was my goal. I wanted to make pumpernickel of some kind. And to do that, it's a rye bread, so you've got to go to a rye starter. So in here, it has a whole bunch of different things, procedures. It starts off with a whole bunch of procedures, how to make starters of various different kinds. But once you have one, you can just kind of go to the other. And what I'm going to make here is a deli rye bowl. Now, I won't be able to make the whole dough. I'll be able to make the sponge for this video. And it's pretty simple. Now, if you have a starter, the first thing you need to do, pardon me, I'll hold the book down with my mortar and pestle. See, it's a multitasker. Is follow the directions. So it's pretty simple. I have my, let's see, I need to get my rye flour here. Okay, I'm back. What I have here, something I'll need for the recipe. This is gluten, believe it or not, the stuff that gives bread its strength and what people are often or sometimes allergic to. It's called Vital Wheat Gluten. That's the product name. And because rye is lacking in gluten, and you need that for the dough or for the bread, you got to buy some extra. You can make it yourself, but it's a pain in the butt. So we're going to do that. Here's my rye flour. And if you take a sniff, you'll smell it as being sweet. Sweeter than normal flours. Here's my bread flour. Doesn't really smell like much. Here is my whole wheat flour, which I'll use for other stuff. And it's got that nutty whole wheat flavor. or smell that you eat, or smell when you make your bread with that. So that's how you tell which one is which, besides the color. So here's the whole wheat. Here's the rye on my left. A couple of different ways you can tell. Number one, the whole wheat's a bit grainier. But the other one I use is just smell, because they look similar. They are similar in color, and similar in look. So I don't go by the smell oftentimes when I'm using these canisters. That's because I haven't labeled them, which I should. All right, so let's get started. Let's move all this stuff out of the way. I'm going to use these two things here for the pumpernickel I'm going to make. My starter has been sitting out on the counter for about an hour. It was in the fridge where I keep it during the week. And as you can see, you can't see it. You can see, if we look up close, see all the little bubbles? That means it's active. And that's when you want to use it. When I took this out of the fridge, it was approximately half this high. That's right, it was right about here. So this is now warmed up quite a bit and is becoming active. So it's time to start using it. All right, we need a bowl. I could do it on the counter. We could try doing that if you want. I wouldn't recommend it because, in fact, we're not going to do that because sponges are really, really, really wet. But you know what? We're going to do that anyway. Because I'm just that kind of guy. So here's my recipe. I want to move that over here because I'm going to need the space. I'm going to take all this stuff out of the way. I'm not going to need either of these. Olive oil I'll use later for the bowl. All right, and I've got this nifty little tray that holds various different things. That's going out of the way too. All right, so now here's the space we have working with. Let me show you a picture of that. There's the space. All this area right here. That's what I'm going to use to do this. All right. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to need, because this is very wet, is a scraper. Do not use unless you have a wooden board. In fact, not even if you have some kind of laminate or fake countertop, you can use a metal scraper. Otherwise, use a plastic scraper. In fact, I would just use a plastic scraper because it won't damage anything. So here we go. It's got two flat edges and a place to grip it. It's got a textured piece here. It pushes out. This gives it strength and still, because this part won't bend easily, especially not this way. So when I scrape, it's not going anywhere. All right. Okay. Next. Where's my recipe? Oh, yes. It says I need 200 grams of rye starter. How do I measure 200 grams? Well, it also gives the English measurements, but I don't like English measurements because they're not exact. Hint, I've got a scale. This is a very nice little scale. It folds up like that. It's from Joseph, and it's called the Joseph. I know, Joseph. Open it up. It's got a plate or a bowl. And we turn it on. Press the button, and it comes up with 0. It's called tare, T-A-R-E. And we're going to set this to the right units, which is grams. And I need 200 grams. So here we go. This, you can give that a sniff. Sweet, beery. You can see all that wonderful air in there. That's what you want. That means the yeast and the bacteria are active. Let me get a bowl and get a spoon. And now we're going to measure 200 grams. That's about 60. Probably need about 3 or 4 of these. 110. That's 160. All right, so this is probably going to go over, so I've got to be careful. 90. Stop shaking. Yes, my hand is like that. We're at 205. Close enough. Let's back over here. All right. Now I'm going to take this back off. Now it says I need 315 grams of bread flour. So again, we're going to take out a bowl. I'm going to use one of my mixing bowls. I'm not actually going to use it for mixing, but it's there. It's convenient. And now by pressing, because the bowl and the ceramic bowl and this bowl have different weights, my tare comes out as 117 instead of 0. So I'm just going to tap the 0 button on there, which is also the on-off button, and that will bring it back to 0. And now I need 315 grams of bread flour. So let's grab a 1-cup measure. Grab my bread flour. There we go. The white one. And we measure it out. 160. 312. 315. Okay. Next, recipe calls for 105 grams of rye flour. So here's my rye flour. I'm going to sniff it just to make sure. Yep, that's sweet. 105. Now I'm going to, I don't want to do the addition here because, you know, I might get confused. 105 plus 315 is 420, but let's just be careful. I want 105. Now, rye flour is less dense than regular flour, than bread flour. So that's 70. So it's not the same measurement as you think. If you get used to measuring bread flour, this will be a little different. And 105. Okay. I'm going to zero this again, or tare it again, T-A-R-E. And the recipe now says that I need 7 grams of vital wheat gluten. So I'm going to grab a teaspoon and my vital wheat gluten. And you know what? I've had some issues with this scale and the whole 7 grams thing. So I'm just going to grab a plate. I'm going to tare that back to 0. And let's see what we get. It says 10. Ooh, that's too much. That's 9. 8. 7. Perfect. I'm going to pour that right into the flour mixture. It acts and feels just like flour, but it's not flour. It's actually just proteins. And I'm going to need caraway seeds. Ooh. Here's that plate. Caraway seeds. Oh, I don't have enough. But I'll deal with it. Just won't have a caraway, as strong a caraway flavor as usual. It calls for 13 grams. I only have, heck, it doesn't even measure. Less than a gram. Usually it'd be about tablespoon plus a teaspoon or 4 teaspoons. I don't have anywhere near that. I'll just use what I got. Oh well. Next, I need 11 grams of salt. Grab my salt. It says 2 teaspoons. I think I'd leave that. Could be humidity in the air, and the salt could have expanded. Okay, 7, 10, 11. Oop, 12. Too much. Take a little bit off. A little bit more. Oh, that's good. All right. I'll throw that in there. And okay, now we need water. Now, water is a tricky situation here. If you're using water out of a tap, it often has chlorine in it. Chlorine kills bacteria and yeast. You don't want that. So I'm going to turn off the skip because we don't need that now. So what I buy is either filtered water or distilled. So here we go. Here's my, this was from Pampered Chef. You can see right here, no, it's backwards from Pampered Chef. And it does both solid and liquid. So if you want solid, you'd use it this way, and it has a scale here. If you want liquid, use it this way, and use the blue scale here. It has both metric and English measurements. So I'm going to take out my water, which is at room temp, which today is well over 70. We need 300 milliliters. So we're going to go to the metric scale here and measure out 300 milliliters. Yeah, that's a tad over. A couple of drops. Let's see what we got. Now it's a tad under. That's it. Okay. I keep this under my sink. It's, whatever. It can be any place. All right. So next thing is mix the dough by hand. It says combine the starter, flours, vital wheat, gluten, water, caraway seeds, and salt in a bowl. Mix with your hands or blah, blah, blah. Basically, we're going to take a whisk because it's easy. There are many kinds of whisks. This one is just a straight, not the round kind, just this, because I really don't want that many tines. I'm just going to mix this up. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be complete combined, just there. Okay. And starter, flours, vital wheat, gluten, water, caraway seeds, and salt in the bowl, mix with your hands. Okay. All right, so what I can do now we're at the point where we're going to start mixing all the liquids together. Here's how you do it by hand. Pour everything out on the counter. Get this out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. And you're going to take your hand and you're just going to make a well. Try and make the sides as high on the way around as otherwise. And now I'm going to take my starter and a spatula, if I can find it. There we go. The magic drawer. I'm just going to scrape this right in. Could I combine the starter and the water? Yes. Am I going to? No. Not required. Won't make any difference. I've seen recipes that do that. It certainly looks better. And you think you're getting an even distribution, but by the time you're finished mixing this dough, it's going to be quite well distributed, even if you're not using a machine. All right, here we go. Okay. We're going to actually keep this out a little bit, just open this up. I want some extra because my hands are going to be pretty messy after this. And actually, because they're going to be messy after this, I'm going to take off my ring. Ugh. As I said, I'm going to take off my ring. Okay. And we're going to take some of the water here. We're going to just do this. We're going to pour it right in here, and it's going to form a nice little batter. So I'm just going to use my fingers here and stir things around. Got a little leakage. That's okay. Just I'm using my fingers as a whisk, as the whisk I just used. I could just use the whisk I have, but why do that when I can just use my fingers? It's just as easy, and I have more control. I can reach out with my fingers and grab a little extra flour, start mixing this into a ball or mixing it into a dough. As I do this, the flour well is going to expand. Okay, you can see that the starter here has mixed with the water, and now it's absorbing flour from the well. And we're going to keep doing that, adding more water. More water, mix it up. Keep adding more flour to this with your hands so it doesn't get too liquid. You don't want this to go everywhere. I've had that happen before. That was a mess. I was making 10 challah with a 5-pound bag of flour, and it ends up being about 10 pounds. It's kind of crazy. It went all over the counter. I had to start scraping it up. It took me a week to get it out of the crevices. All right, so here we go. It's starting to get thicker again, see? Keep going. Just keep mixing that flour in. A little bit at a time, just keep going around in a circle with your fingers. Don't worry about getting your hand. By the way, make sure you wash your hands before you start this, the usual 20 seconds or so. Repeat the alphabet twice. Okay. All right, let's see what we get here. I'm going to pour in the rest of the water, take my chances here. And I'm going to keep mixing. Now what's happening here is the flour is not just mixing into the water, it's actually absorbing the water. So not only does it get thicker because there's more flour there in the mix, it's just the flour itself is absorbing more water. So it's getting thicker for two reasons. And I don't know if you can see it. You can see some water escaping here and there. That's okay. Just keep going around in your circle. Just like this. Let the well expand. Feel free to speed up your video if you want to at this point. It might take a couple of minutes. You see, again, it's much thicker than it was. Okay. It's time to turn this thing into a dough. Actually, I've made a mistake. This recipe does not call for a sponge. It goes straight to the dough. So this is the dough. Okay. You can see it's getting even thicker. All right, it's time to get the now. This is pretty much static. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to flow anyplace on me. So it's time to mix in the rest of the flour. So I'm just going to take this, take my other hand, which is clean, and just kind of coat the flour, or coat push the flour into the mix. And now I'm just going to start scraping it all in like this until I've got something that resembles a dough. You can do this method with any recipe that goes straight to dough, but not to sponge. Sponge, well, you could, but it's very sticky. You'll end up giving yourself a flour bath quite often. All right, so here we are. It's kind of like a dough, very ragged. That's because it's not fully mixed. And that's okay. So now we're going to get rid of, see all this stuff in my hand? All right, so we're going to take a little bit of flour here. I'm going to dust my hand with it and give myself a flour bath. Otherwise, it'll just, if I try to scrape it off, it'll just stick to me. And it's the other hand, it'll be in a worse situation. All right. Now both hands are a bit covered in dough, so I'm going to use my spoon. Do this again. Whoops. Just want to dust them. Okay. Almost there. If there's any loose flour on the board, you can use that. And one more time. Just dust my hands a little bit. Okay. Ooh, cracking the knuckles. Don't like that. All right. Now, let's get this dough mixed. This is good enough for now. I'll wash them up later. I'm going to actually get a little bit more flour here in my spoon. This is about how much I get, about a quarter cup or so. And now we're going to use the scraper. Hold it like this. Doesn't matter which way you go. Either way is fine. I'm using the broad side down. And we're going to scrape the board. In this case, the counter. You can do this on a wooden board. You can do this on anything that's flat, clean, and non-porous. Well, except for the board, wooden board. Amazingly, it doesn't seem to accept flour into the pores very much. You can hear the scraping. That's the flour that's dried a little bit onto the counter. Okay, so now we have, we're just going to use the scraper to mix the dough so that I don't have to touch it myself. Because it's, as I said, very wet. What's interesting here is the more I mix this, the less wet it's going to be, and not just because the flour is absorbing water. Gluten is developing here. Gluten develops when you need dough. And that creates a stronger structure. It also absorbs more water by itself. As the gluten protein absorbs water, it gets stronger. And you end up with a stiffer dough. And this is why you need, this is one of the ways you get strength in your dough. You can see that there's some stuff on here. Dough, we're just going to clean that up. All right, so now we have a relatively non-sticky dough. It's still sticky, but it's workable. So I'm going to switch from that to my hands. So here's how you knead dough with your hands. First, I'm going to dust them real quick. Things don't stick to me too much. If you're right-handed, we're going to do it the way I do it. If you're left-handed, you're going to reverse it. All right, so you take your dominant hand and you fold the dough over this way. And then you turn the dough. Sorry, let's try it again. Take your dominant hand and fold it over this way. You take your non-dominant hand, you're going to roll the dough. Turn it, quarter turn, repeat. Okay? Now, the way you'll see it in a lot of cooking shows is they'll do this and they'll use both hands to roll the dough. I discovered that is not required. You just take the one hand and go. And now the trick to turning it is you don't just want to pick it up. Some doughs are pretty sticky. And instead of, if you try to turn it with both hands, it's going to stick to your hands. This is sticking to my hands. So you want to move faster than that. So the way you do it is when you go to roll it, at the end, turn your wrist this way. Not a lot. You can now use the other hand to help it, but that's how you do it. So you see it's still not sticking to the board, even though it's very sticky. And that's good. So fold, roll, turn, fold, roll, turn, fold, roll, turn. You can see it's, if the video is good enough, you will see that it's starting to stick to the counter a little bit. That's okay, let it do that. And it's also very wet. It's really sticking to my hands, that's okay. You'll feel a whole bunch of lumps in the flour, and that's all right too. Whoops. Because what's happening here is by rolling it like this is called kneading, you are stretching the dough. By stretching the dough, it's going to get rid of those lumps. The lumps will absorb more water. The dough will get drier, or seem drier. Now, because sometimes you really got to move fast to keep things from sticking, I'm going to speed up. I'm using my dominant hand to help roll the dough or turn the dough because it ain't turned on its own because it's too sticky yet. All right, we're going to keep this up for a few minutes. You can feel free to move past this. Now, if you have a mixer, this is obviously much easier. But some days I don't like to use a mixer. I've heard comments from people online saying that a dough hook on a mixer tears the dough instead of stretching it. Stretching is what you want. That's what develops the gluten. But I have noticed no difference. Either way works. If you don't have a mixer, then this is the way to go. You can already see this is starting to form into a less shaggy ball. Watch what happens when I do this. See how it's grabbing the dough from my hand? It's eventually going to become so strong enough, the dough, that it's going to actually pull it away from my hand. So I'm just going to keep this up. It's okay if it sticks to the board. Or you can use your dough scraper, which is plastic, so things don't stick very much. But let's show you how to do that. First, I'm going to give my hands a flour bath because it's time. You can't really touch anything without doing this. And I don't want to be perfect here. I just want to make sure that when I touch my dough scraper, it doesn't stick to my hand. Okay. Not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. All right, so let me show you how to do this with a dough scraper. First, I'm going to scrape the board from everywhere. Understand that some of this is going to go on the floor. Don't get it off the floor and use it again. Just clean it up later. All right. See, it's not sticking to this. And roll. And roll. And roll. Turn and twist. And roll. Now, why is it not sticking to the board now? Because I used some flour and it has coated the outside on my hands, and now what's remaining is coated the dough. So you can see it's already forming up now. Here I am using the scraper to turn and roll, turn and fold, and then roll it out. Turn and fold, roll it out, turn and fold. Now it's starting to stick. Just keep going. Now, because it's summer, the flour has probably absorbed some water. So I've probably got a little too much water in the dough. So what we do is we take it, just grab a little bit from here, and I'm just going to dust. See if I can turn a light on underneath my counter. See if that helps your view. Here we go. Helps my view. Suddenly I see all this extra dough that's been lying on my counter I didn't see before. So the answer there is I'll always use a well-lit space. No matter how well you think you can see, there's going to be something you miss. All right, so a little flour went on the counter, so that we're going to push that under the dough so that the dough is floured on the bottom and doesn't stick to the counter. Okay, now it's not sticky, and we can use our hands again. Turn, fold, roll, turn, fold, roll, turn, fold, roll, and watch my hand do this. At the end, right at the end. See it? If we had the right amount of caraway seeds, you'd see those all over the place inside the dough. Okay, it's getting sticky again. Let's grab a pinch, dust everything, dust your hands, continue. You want to keep this up until you don't feel you don't feel any of the lumps, and the dough has become stretchy and it doesn't stick to your hands completely. That will mean that it has absorbed as much water as it can for now. Oop, getting sticky. Twist your hands. So you can see this is really turned into a nice looking dough. And it looks like I haven't had to add very much flour, just a couple tablespoons or so. You don't want to let the flour the dough get dry. Dough gets dry or stiff, too stiff. That means that the gluten does not have enough water to hydrate and form its bonds that help it do its thing. So you want to make sure you use as little flour as possible to keep the kneading process going without letting it get stiff. As long as it's nice and, see how nice and soft that is? That's where you want it. Keep going here. Now let's see, the recipe says to keep that, what you want to do, and I don't know why, they say that I need to do this. And you do this for about 5 minutes. If you got hand issues, don't bother. Don't stretch your fingers out all the way. Leave them curled. You're gonna hurt yourself. Just keep going. Yeah, your hands will get tired. And I'm guessing the reason he says to do this, because I don't know exactly why, is to completely mix the dough and to help form gluten. I don't know if that's required. I have not done it very much in the past. I do seem to have noticed that the dough rises a little better when I have. It's a little stiffer and holds its shape. Holding the shape of a dough before baking is something else we'll talk about, maybe in the next video. So I can't do that. We're not going to talk about that until we're talking about the final forming. And that's not going to be for a couple of hours. Normally, this dose is going to take 9 hours or something like that. In the summertime, everything seems to happen faster. It takes about 7. Because after you finish mixing this thing, let's see, first fermentation, transfer into a stainless steel bowl, lighted close, metal cover, and let rest for 3 hours at room temp. And then you're gonna divide it in 2, so you get 2 loaves, and let it rest for 15 minutes. And then you do the final forming, and it's supposed to go for another 3 hours, but really it's until it's about doubled. You can see that this dough has gotten way stronger than before. So watch it stretch. That's the gluten working for you. Keep this up for a minute. Again, if you have hand issues, don't do this. Don't even bother using a tool. All right. Again, if you're using a mixer, this is not required at all. It's not even called for. The recipe does have instructions for you doing this with a mixer, and it does not call for this. Okay, so now, as you can see, my hands are well and truly coated with dough. Use the scraper to help with some of that. So at this point, I really don't want to add too much more flour if I don't have to. It's looking pretty good. There's another step to this because we're mixing it by hand. The idea here is we really want to develop as much gluten as possible. That's going to help to keep it shaped on the final rise. All right. Okay, we're going to do the flour bath thing again. Keep your hands well away from the edge of the counter so you don't spread stuff on the floor. If I hadn't done this flour bath thing, there'd be an awful lot of dough that would be stuck to my hands and not going into the dough. I'd be washing all that dough right down the drain. Let's see. Okay. See all that stuff on there? That's not sticky, it's a little bit dry. So it's going to act like flour and help me finish mixing my dough. If you see little bits of flour on your counter, you can just kind of roll your dough over to them and pick them up. It'll stick. Okay, you can see this is no longer sticking to my hand. So that means that the technique has worked. There's one more step we have to do, and that is to roll, believe it or not, stretch it and fold it a few times. So it says to stretch it into about a 5 by 15 inch thing. So I'm going to stretch this. Almost there. That's why I floured my board so this doesn't stick to the board. A little bit more. Okay, that's about 15 inches. So we're going to fold this, the tri-panel, and do it again. We're going to do this 4 more times. Now I'm sweating. So I'm going to take off my glasses. Okay. You can also use a rolling pin to do this if you really want. I've done that. Doesn't really matter. however you want to stretch your dough. You'll notice as you do this that the dough will get stiffer. And that is because the gluten is stretching and it can't stretch much more, just like a rubber band. So that's why that's happening. But we're going to keep this going because by stretching those bonds, we're going to develop more gluten and more strength in the dough. And we need that for the final rise. Okay, that's 4. I think it's 4. Correct me if I'm wrong. Some dough stuck here. So make sure everything's well floured so it doesn't stick to anything. Keep turning it so the stretchy parts that get exposed to the counter where it tears, you can see little tears here and there. That stuff's going to be really sticky and wet. So you want to make sure you keep those floured. See? There it is. That's a tear. That's real sticky, so we want to put some flour on there. All right, now if you wanted to do this with a rolling pin, look, a rolling pin. This is a French rolling pin. You can tell because it has a tapered end. I always flour my hands and the rolling pin and the board and the dough because otherwise something will stick. All right, so now that everything is well floured, you just sit there and 2 hands and roll it out. Start in the middle and work towards the ends. Oop, it's stuck. Do not start here and roll because that just defeats the purpose. Just rolling it back onto itself. Okay, this is pretty long. That's pretty sticky. So once again, doesn't matter if there's a few lumps in there. We'll do this one more time. If you can't get enough flour off the board, just roll hold the rolling pin into the flour, and that'll take care of it. Flip it. Again. Roll it out. You see it's sticking a little bit. A little flour over there. Roll this all the way out. Okay. That's the last time. Now the instructions say to take it and put it in a bowl coated with olive oil. A little bowl. A little olive oil. Any good olive oil will do. Unless it's extra virgin. Not too much. Experts can really pour olive oil like nobody's business. All right, I just want to get the bottom coated. Okay, you take the dough, throw it in there, spin it to coat. Keep going until the whole thing, just hold it like this. Now, that side and this side and the other side until everything's coated with a little bit of oil. Pat it down. I'm going to wash my hands and then we're going to cover it with plastic wrap. You can use a wet towel and cover that, and I've done that. That works. But I don't like making more laundry for my wife, so let's just get some plastic. Oh yeah, by the way, none of these people that I've shown you whose products I'm using, they don't know I'm doing this. I don't get paid for this. This is all a hobby for me. This is my favorite. Can't read it because it's backwards. Stretch Tight. Favorite plastic wrap in the world. Sticks to just about everything, including itself, but I don't mind. And if you get the right one, it even comes with a little cutter that you'll find inside the roll. Otherwise, you're using a pair of scissors or a knife, and I hate that. All right. And there it is. We're going to come back in several hours. Next dough. This time we're going to use a machine. Pardon me while I need a few things. Here we go. Out comes the KitchenAid. I'm sure many of you know this by heart. All right. This is a standard model, 4.5 quart. Nothing fancy. Make sure it's off. All right. Pull out the rest. Actually, wait a minute. We'll use the bowl to help measure. Time for pumpernickel. What did I do with it? There we go. All right. So we need 1.5 cups of water. There we go. And it needs to be warm. Because we're using yeast for this recipe. Yeast needs to be, it grows best in water or in liquid somewhere between 100 and 110. So this is about 78 or 80 degrees. I'm going to throw it in for 30 seconds, and that should take care of that. Now I need 2¼ spoons active dry yeast. That would be 1 packet. If you have packets, if that's all you got, I've got Fleischmann's Dry Active Yeast. They don't know you're doing this. I'm doing this because it's a hobby and I like the product. Been using it all my life. Came from my mother. All right, so measuring spoon. Okay. Let's go measure my water. Measure the temp. Here I have an OXO Chef. Here it is. USDA measures both in Fahrenheit and Celsius. Slide it off, and there you have your bowl. I mean your thermometer. Got a button on top. Now it's interesting with the light on over here, you can't see anything right over here. So turn right back off. All right. And you still can't see it. All right. So. Okay. There you see a little button right there. You click that, turn it on, and in a couple seconds comes up and tells me what the temperature is in here, 78 degrees. So what's the temp of my water? It says No higher than 110. 103. Give it a stir. Needs to be 105 to 110, they say, in the recipe. I like 100 to 110, but what the heck. I'm just going to give this 20 seconds and go. Let's measure my yeast. That's 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, and a quarter teaspoon. Put that back in the fridge. Grab our water. Take another look-see. By the way, please note, what's really cool about this is you can angle it. It's got three different angles. That would be vertical, 45, 90 degrees. It's kind of useful, especially for right now. It says 112, 116. It's too hot. It's 120. I overheated it. It said 10, 20 seconds. I should have just used 10. What we can do is let it sit for a few minutes. Let's turn this back off. Don't want to waste the battery in it. And continue with collecting ingredients. I'm going to need a bowl for this. Okay. What we'll do is hello, ramekin. Here we go. All right. I need 3/4 teaspoon, 3/4 tablespoons. How they make up these measurements, I don't know. Right? 3/4 of a tablespoon. What the heck is that? Because you got 3 teaspoons per tablespoon. They want 3/4 of that. All right. So what's a quarter of 3 tablespoons? So you gotta divide. You gotta make sure you have the same denominator on all the sides. So 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons, and you need 3/4 of that. So you multiply 3 over 3 by 3 over 4. And so that gives you the 2 numerators divided by the 2 denominators. So the numerators multiplied are 9, and the denominators multiplied are 12. So how many teaspoons is that? I don't know. Oh, yes. So let me think of that through again. Oops. All right, so I want to know what 1/4 of a tablespoon is. All right, so that's going to be 3 over 3 times 1 over 4. That's going to be 1 over 12. Sorry, 3 over 12. So that's 3 teaspoons divided by 12 is going to be 1 over 4. So that's how I'm talking about. My math is off. Hey, Google. What is 3/4 of 1 tablespoon?
The answer is 0.75 grams tablespoons.
No kidding. It told me it was 3/4 of a tablespoon. So 3/4 of a tablespoon times 3/3, let's see. Math used to be my good trait. So 1/4 of a tablespoon would be 3/4 of a teaspoon. So that means we need to multiply that by 3. So 3/4 of a teaspoon times 2 would give you 1.5. And another quarter, so it's 1.5 plus 0.75 is 2.25. So we need 2.25 teaspoons of salt. See, it wasn't that hard. Right. So, here's my salt. 1, what is that measuring here? That's a half. I need 4 of these. There's 2. Switch to the teaspoon. And the quarter. All right, next, let's measure the temp on our water here. It says still too warm. That's it. Okay, we need a tablespoon of molasses. Ooh. Now I'm going to do a trick here. If I take let's take a look at something. How warm is my ceramic ramekin? It should be room temperature. And it is 75, 74. Yeah. 75, 76. It's about room temperature, 78 degrees. Yeah, there it goes. It's about 78 degrees. What if I take this, which is still too warm, and add it to that? Answer, the water cools off. So that'll give me the right temp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some water in here. Not all of it. About a half. I'm going to give it a stir. You want to make sure all the yeast is wet and not clumped. That's also why you use a lot more water than you should, than they say sometimes. But it's telling you 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of water for yeast. Forget that. Just add a bunch because you want it to look like this. Otherwise, it's going to clump. Now, yeast loves sugar. Loves and loves. And that's how we're going to help it bloom. So and molasses is full of it. So we're going to take 1 tablespoon. Here we go. And we're going to get that in there. Good stuff. Can't wait to make beans later. And again, we're going to stir the heck out of this. So all mixed up. We're going to come back in 10 minutes. So here's what it looks like right now. It's all the foam on top because I just mixed it up and it's kind of foamy. We're going to set that aside. All right. Here we go. I need 1.5 teaspoons of instant coffee. I just happen to have some. I've made actual coffee with it, and it's horrible. I grew up on this stuff. I don't know how I drank it. Oops. It needs 1.5 teaspoons. Because the other the other measuring spoon is now dirty. I have a second one, so this says 1 and a half. Yeah, I know. Where's the fancy education here on mixing stuff? Answer, not. Tablespoon of cocoa butter. 1 tablespoon, that's all? Okay, I thought it was more. I grew up on Hershey's Cocoa. There's a recipe on the side of the box for hot chocolate. Can't recommend it enough, especially if you add a little cayenne pepper to it. Okay. Next. Well, I'm out of caraway seeds, so I can't use that. Need 1 cup of whole wheat flour. That would be this. Here's my 1 cup measure. I just happen to have that. Some folks sift their flour to make sure it doesn't impact. I don't bother. They go through it so fast it's not even fun. Now I need 1/2 cup of rye flour. Look, my own rye flour. Who has rye flour? This guy does. Okay. And now I need 1 3/4 cups of bread flour, or all-purpose flour. One. One and a half. Quarter cup measure. One 3/4. Okay. Okay. Let's take a look at our yeast mixture. Remember how it looked all liquidy before? See how foamy that is now? That means the yeast is activated, and we are good to go. So I'm going to pour this in. I'm going to rinse it out with the rest of the water. Scrape up whatever got stuck down there. Splash. Okay. Fill up time. And we're going to mix this for a few minutes We start it low. Until the dough is basically combined. This is to avoid flour going everywhere. I'll take the camera, I'm going to move it over here so you can see what's going on. See, it's starting to come away from the bowl. Time to accelerate. No more loose flour around. And one more. And you will see the bowl become clean. So there's nothing at the bottom stuck there? That's good. You're going to keep this up for about 3 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get time. Turn on the kitchen timer. 3. That's on my stove over there. And now that's running. It's clean up. By the way, like how the KitchenAid is walking around there? I love that. Means the dough has some masking. Not that we didn't know. That's going to be it for this video. I'll show you the dough before we leave. So you know what it looks like. You give it a little knead just to make sure it's the right texture. And what this process is doing is stretching the gluten and making it stronger. So that the dough forms into a loaf like. Don't you like how this thing is walking around? I'm not careful. If I let this thing sit, I go to the bathroom or something, and I get talking to my wife, or whatever it is, this thing could just walk itself right off the counter. Another 25 seconds. And there she goes. All right. There's my dough. So there we go. You can see that other than the dough sticking at the very end, this is clean. So we're just going to take this, scrape it off here. It's going to be nice and warm because of the water. going to come right off of there. There we go. That's pretty clean. You see, it's very sticky. It's supposed to be. Guess what? Time for the infamous bread bath for the dough too. Long video, huh? Remember, skip the, just accelerate past the parts you don't want to watch. Okay. And you'll see that this dough has a different color than last time. See? Turn this down a bit. You can see what I'm talking about. There it is. And again, very sticky, so we're just going to scrape some flour under it so it doesn't stick. See the color? That's the molasses talking. All right. We've got our board floured. Somebody do that a second ago. So we're just going to sit here and knead the dough. To make sure it's at the right consistency, not too sticky, not too whatever. You want it to be nice and soft and not too sticky, just like the last one. If you find little pieces of dough lying around that came off when I was washing my hands with the flour, just stick it back in there. All gonna join up later. I've seen instructions on recipes that say, don't do that, and it's total bull. I'm just go ahead and do it. Works great. Never had a problem. That tells me is that they're not letting the dough sit long enough. Or knead it enough. Now look at this. This how it was sticking to me before. Now it's not. That has nothing to do with how much flour I just added to it to wash my hands and dust the board. This has everything to do with the gluten and the flour absorbing water. It's still sticky, but not like it was, and it's not sticking. See, it is not sticking to my hand. We're just going to keep this up for a minute. So, see, I'm going to turn my wrist. I'm going to go slow. Turn my wrist, helps turn the dough. Use the other hand to fold it over, roll it, roll and twist. If you don't go too slow, it'll stick to the board. But if you go faster, see, it's not sticking to the board. Or my hand. I'm going to do this for about 5 minutes. I throw it back in that bowl with a little olive oil. And I'm going to put a kitchen towel dampened with hot water, put it over the top and let it rise. And I can do the same thing with this. And you want to roll the dough, not press it. This This will at least keep one hand clean. But this hand's not really dirty. See, it's still not sticking. So this is a pumpernickel. Why the molasses and why the coffee? Real pumpernickel is all rye, and it bakes 120 degrees in a special container, airtight, watertight, for about 16 hours, 16 to 18 hours. During that time, it looks like a regular dough when you put it in there. What happens is the sugars caramelize and turn dark and bitter, and that's why the dough looks very dark, and why pumpernickel is somewhat bitter. Now we're not doing that here. I don't have the container, nor do I desire to have the container. So we've got to imitate the bitter flavor and the sugars. So molasses is a little bitter. Coffee is certainly a little bitter. You combine the two, and you get an approximation of a pumpernickel. All right, this is beautiful. This is called chafing, what I'm doing. You don't bother, I'll deal with that another time. All right. A little more olive oil. Try and do it along the sides so you can just put the dough in there and it'll get its stuff. Okay. There it is. Take out my kitchen towel. Hot water. The reason I'm using hot is because it helps to keep things moist. And it helps to keep the temperature on the dough up. Just bring it out. Just want it damp, not soaking. Fold it in half, over the top, and let it sit. That's all she wrote, folks. Thanks very much for your time. Comments, questions, send me a note.